I'm Ron Jones. We spoke on the phone. I know how difficult everything is at a time like this, Mrs. Stevens, and our job is to take the burden off you. Just tell me what you want and we will see that your wishes are carried out. Diane said uncertainly, I am not even sure what to ask. Jones nodded. Let me explain. Our services include a casket, a memorial service for your friends, a cemetery plot, and the burial. He hesitated. From what I read of your husband's death in the newspapers, Mrs. Stevens, you'll probably want a closed casket for the memorial service, so no. Jones looked at her in surprise. But I want it open. I want Richard to be able to see all his friends, before he... Her voice trailed off. Jones was studying her sympathetically. I see. Then if I may make a suggestion, we have a cosmetician who does excellent work where he said tactfully it's needed. Will that be all right? Richard would hate it, but yes. There's just one thing more. We'll need the clothes you want your husband to be buried in. She looked at him in shock. Diane could feel the cold hands of a stranger violating Richard's naked body, and she shivered. Mrs. Stevens. I should dress Richard myself. But I couldn't bear to see him the way he is. I want to remember Mrs. Stevens. Diane swallowed. I hadn't thought about her voice was strangled. I'm sorry. She was unable to go on. He watched her stumble outside and hail a taxi. When Diane returned to her apartment, she walked into Richard's closet. There were 2 racks filled with his suits. Each outfit held a treasured memory. There was the tan suit Richard had been wearing the night they met at the art gallery. I like your curves. They have the delicacy of a Rossetti or a Manet. Could she let go of that suit? No. Her fingers touched the next one. It was the light gray sport jacket Richard had worn to the picnic, when they had been caught in the rain. Your place or mine? This isn't just a one-night stand. I know. How could she not keep it? The pinstriped suit was next. You like French food? I know a great French restaurant. The navy blazer, the suede jacket, Diane wrapped the arms of a blue suit around herself and hugged it. I could never let any of these go. Each of them was a cherished remembrance. I can't. Sobbing, she grabbed a suit at random and fled. The following afternoon, there was a message on Diane's voicemail, MRS. Stevens, this is Detective Greenberg. I wanted to let you know that everything here has been cleared. I've talked to the Dalton mortuary. You're free to go ahead with whatever plans you want to make. There was a slight pause. I wish you well, goodbye. Diane called Ron Jones at the mortuary. I understand that my husband's body has arrived there. Yes, Mrs. Stevens. I already have someone taking care of the cosmetics, and we've received the clothes you sent. Thank you. I thought would this coming Friday be all right for the funeral? Friday will be fine. By then we will have taken care of all the necessary details. I would suggest 11 a.m. In 3 days, Richard and I will be parted forever. Or until I join him. Thursday morning, Diane was busily preparing the final details of the funeral, verifying the long list of invitees and the pallbearers, when the telephone call came. Mrs. Stevens. Yes. This is Ron Jones. I just wanted to let you know that I received your paperwork and the change was made, just as you requested. Diane was puzzled. Paperwork? Yes. The courier brought it yesterday, with your letter. I didn't send any, frankly. I was a little surprised, but, of course, it was your decision. My decision. We cremated your husband's body 1 hour ago. Chapter 6. Paris, France. Kelly Harris was a Roman candle that had exploded into the world of fashion. She was in her late 20s, an African American with skin the color of melted honey and a face that was a photographer's dream. She had intelligent soft brown eyes, sensual full lips, lovely long legs, and a figure filled with erotic promise. Her dark hair was cut short in deliberate dishabille, with a few strands sprawling across her forehead. Earlier that year, the readers of Elle and Mademoiselle magazines had voted Kelly the most beautiful model in the world. As she finished dressing, Kelly looked around the penthouse, feeling, as always, a sense of wonder. The apartment was spectacular. It was on the exclusive Rue St. Louis NL, in the 4th arrondissement of Paris. The apartment had a double-door entry that opened into an elegant hall with high ceilings and soft yellow wall panels, and the living room was furnished with an eclectic mixture of French and Regency furniture. From the terrace, across the Seine, was a view of Notre Dame. Kelly was looking forward to the coming weekend. Mark was going to take her out for one of his surprise treats. I want you to get all dressed up, honey. You're going to love where we're going. Kelly smiled to herself. Her husband was the most wonderful man in the world. Kelly glanced at her wristwatch and sighed. I had better get moving, she thought. The show starts in half an hour. A few moments later, she left the apartment, heading down the hallway toward the elevator. As she did so, the door of a neighboring apartment opened and Madame Josette Lapointe came out into the corridor. A small butterball of a woman, she always had a friendly word for Kelly. Good afternoon, Madame Harris. Kelly smiled. Good afternoon, Madame Lapointe. You're looking beautiful, as always. Thank you. Kelly pressed the button for the elevator. A dozen feet away, a burly man in work clothes was adjusting a wall fixture. He glanced at the two women, then quickly turned his head. How is the modeling going? Madame Lapointe asked. Very well, thank you. I must come and see you in one of your fashion shows soon. I'll be happy to arrange it anytime. The elevator arrived, and Kelly and Madame Lapointe stepped inside. The man in work clothes pulled out a small walkie-talkie, spoke hurriedly into it, and rapidly walked away. As the elevator door started to close, Kelly heard the telephone ring in her apartment. She hesitated. She was in a hurry, but it could be Mark calling. You go ahead, she said to Madame Lapointe. Kelly stepped out of the elevator, fumbled for her key, found it, and ran back into her apartment. She raced to the ringing telephone and picked it up. "Mark." A strange voice said, "Nanette." Kelly was disappointed. "Nous ne connaissons pas la personne qui répond à ce nom. Pardonnez-moi. C'est une erreur de téléphone. A wrong number." Kelly put the phone down. As she did, there was a tremendous crash that shook the whole building. A moment later, there was a babble of voices and loud screams. Horrified, she rushed into the hall to see what had happened. The sounds were coming from below. Kelly ran down the stairs, and when she finally reached the lobby, she heard loud, excited voices coming from the basement. Apprehensively, she went down the stairs to the basement and stood in shock as she saw the crushed elevator car and the horribly mangled body of Madame Lapointe in it. Kelly felt faint. That poor woman. A minute ago she was alive and I could have been in there with her. If not for that telephone call. A crowd had gathered around the elevator, and sirens were heard in the distance. I should stay, Kelly thought guiltily, but I can't. I have to leave. She looked at the body and whispered, "I'm so sorry, Madame Lapointe." When Kelly arrived at the fashion salon and walked in the stage door, Pierre, the nervous fashion coordinator, was waiting. He pounced on her. "Kelly. Kelly. You're late. The show has already started and I'm sorry, Pierre. There was a bad accident." He looked at her in alarm. "Are you hurt?" "No." Kelly closed her eyes for a moment. The idea of going to work after what she had witnessed was nauseating, but she had no choice. She was the star of the show. "Hurry," Pierre said. "Vite." Kelly started toward her dressing room. The year's most prestigious fashion show was being held at 31 Rue Cambon, Chanel's original salon. The paparazzi were near the front rows. Every seat was occupied, and the back of the room was crowded with standees eager to get the first glimpse of the coming season's new designs. The room had been decorated for the event with flowers and draped fabrics, but no one was paying any attention to the decor. The real attractions were on the long runway, a river of moving colors, beauty, and style. In the background, music was playing, its slow, sexy beat accentuating the movements on stage. As the lovely models glided back and forth, they were accompanied by a voice on a loudspeaker giving a running commentary on the fashions. A satin wool jacket with edged top stitching and georgette pants and a white blouse. A slim blonde undulated across the runway, is wearing a black cashmere turtleneck with white cotton cargo pants. A redhead with an attitude appeared, a black leather jacket and black shantung pants with a white knit shirt. A French model, a pink, 3-button Angora jacket, a pink cable knit turtleneck and black cuffed pants. A Swedish model, a navy satin wool jacket and pants and a lilac charmeuse blouse. And then the moment everyone had been waiting for. The Swedish model had walked off and the runway was deserted. The voice over the loudspeaker said, "And now that the swimming season is here, we are pleased to display our new line of beachwear." There was a crescendo of anticipation, then Kelly Harris appeared at the peak of it. She was wearing a white bikini, a bra that barely covered her firm, young breasts, and a figure-hugging bottom. As she floated sensuously down the runway, the effect was mesmerizing. There was a wave of applause. Kelly gave a faint smile of acknowledgement, circled the runway, and disappeared. Backstage, 2 men were waiting for her. "Mrs. Harris, if I could have a moment." "I'm sorry," Kelly said apologetically. "I have to make a quick change." She started to walk away. "Wait. Mrs. Harris. We are with the police judiciaire. I am Chief Inspector Dune and this is Inspector Stiunu. We need to talk." Kelly stopped. "The police? Talk about what? You are Mrs. Mark Harris, yes?" "Yes." She was filled with sudden apprehension. "Then I am sorry to inform you that your husband died last night." Kelly's mouth was dry. "My husband? How?" "Apparently, he committed suicide." There was a roar in Kelly's ears. She could barely make out what the chief inspector was saying. "Tour Eiffel, midnight, note, very regrettable, deepest sympathy." The words were not real. They were pieces of sound with no meaning. "Madam, this weekend, I want you to get all dressed up, darling. You're going to love where we're going." "There is some mistake," Kelly said. "Mark wouldn't. I am sorry." The chief inspector was watching Kelly closely. "Are you all right, madam?" "Yes. Except that my life has just ended." Pierre bustled over to Kelly, carrying a beautiful striped bikini. "Cherie, you must change quickly. There is no time to waste." He thrust the bikini in her arms. "Vite. Vite." Kelly slowly let it drop to the floor. "Pierre." He was looking at her in surprise. "Yes. You wear it?" Asterisk asterisk asterisk. A limousine brought Kelly back to her apartment. The salon manager had wanted to send someone to be with her, but Kelly had refused. She wanted to be alone. Now, as she walked in through the entrance, Kelly saw the concierge, Philippe Sendra, and a man in overalls, surrounded by a group of tenants. tenants said, "Poor Madame Lapointe. What a terrible accident." The man in overalls held up two jagged ends of a heavy cable. "It was no accident, madam. Someone cut the elevator's safety brakes." Chapter 7. At 4 o'clock in the morning, Kelly was seated in a chair, staring out the window in a daze, her mind racing. "Police Judiciaire, we need to talk, Tour Eiffel. Suicide note, Mark is dead, Mark is dead, Mark is dead." The words became a dirge pulsing through Kelly's brain. She could see Mark's body tumbling down, down, down. She put her arms out to catch him just before he smashed against the sidewalk. "Did you die because of me? Was it something I did? Something I didn't do? Something I said? Something I didn't say? I was asleep when you left, darling, and I didn't have a chance to say goodbye, to kiss you and tell you how much I love you. I need you. I can't stand it without you," Kelly thought. "Help me, Mark. Help me the way you always helped me." She slumped back, remembering how it had been before Mark, in the awful early days. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Kelly had been born in Philadelphia, the illegitimate daughter of Ethel Hackworth, a black maid who worked for one of the town's most prominent white families. The father of the family was a judge. Ethel was 17 and beautiful, and Pete, the handsome, blonde, 20-year-old son of the Turner family, had been attracted to her. He had seduced her, and a month later Ethel learned she was pregnant. "He told Pete," he said, That's wonderful." And he rushed into his father's den to tell him the bad news. Judge Turner called Ethel into his den the next morning and said, "I won't have a whore working in this house. You're fired." With no money and no education or skills, Ethel had taken a job as a cleaning lady in an industrial building, working long hours to support her newborn daughter. In 5 years, Ethel had saved enough money to buy a run-down clapboard house that she turned into a boarding house for men. Ethel converted the rooms into a living room, a dining room, 4 small bedrooms, and a narrow little utility room that Kelly slept in. From that time on, a series of men constantly arrived and left. "These are your uncles," Ethel told her. "Don't bother them." Kelly was pleased that she had such a large family until she became old enough to realize that they were all strangers. When Kelly was 8 years old, she was asleep one night in her small, darkened bedroom when she was awakened by a guttural whisper, "Shhh. Don't make a sound." Kelly felt her nightgown being lifted, and before she could protest, One of her uncles was on top of her and his hand was over her mouth. Kelly could feel him forcibly spreading her legs. She tried to struggle, but he held her down. She felt his member tearing inside her body, and she was filled with excruciating pain. He was merciless, forcing himself inside her, going deeper and deeper, rubbing her skin raw. Kelly could feel her warm blood gushing out. She was silently screaming, afraid she would faint. She was trapped in the terrifying blackness of her room. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she felt him shudder and then withdraw. He whispered, "I'm leaving. But if you ever tell your mother about this, I'll come back and kill her." And he was gone. The next week was almost unbearable. She was in misery all the time, but she treated her lacerated body as best she could until finally the pain subsided. She wanted to tell her mother what had happened, but she did not dare. "If you ever tell your mother about this, I'll come back and kill her." The incident had lasted only a few minutes, but those few minutes altered Kelly's life. She changed from a young girl who had dreamed of having a husband and children to someone who felt that she was tarnished and disgraced. She resolved that she would never let a man touch her again. Something else had changed in Kelly. From that night on, she was afraid of the dark. Chapter 8. When Kelly turned 10, Ethel put her to work helping around the boarding house. Kelly rose at 5 every morning to clean the toilets, scrub the kitchen floor, and help prepare breakfast for the boarders. After school she did the laundry, mopped the floor, dusted, and assisted with dinner. Her life became a dreadful, tedious routine. She was eager to help her mother, hoping for a word of praise. It never came. Her mother was too preoccupied with the boarders to pay any attention to her daughter. When Kelly was very young, a kind boarder had read to her the story Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and Kelly was fascinated by the way Alice escaped into a magic rabbit hole. "That's what I need," Kelly thought, "a way to escape. I can't spend the rest of my days scrubbing toilets and mopping floors and cleaning up after messy strangers." And one day Kelly found her magic rabbit hole. It was her imagination, which would take her anywhere she wanted to go. She rewrote her life. She had a father, and her mother and father were the same color. They never got angry and yelled at her. They all lived in a beautiful home. Her mother and father loved her. Her mother and father loved her. Her mother and father loved her. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. When Kelly was 14, her mother married one of the boarders, a bartender named Dan Burke, a surly, middle-aged man who was negative about everything. Kelly could do nothing to please him. "The dinner is lousy. That dress is the wrong color for you. The shade in the bedroom is still broken. I told you to fix it. You haven't finished cleaning the bathrooms." Kelly's stepfather had a drinking problem. The wall between Kelly's bedroom and her mother and stepfather's bedroom was thin, and night after night, Kelly could hear the sounds of blows and screams. In the morning, Ethel would appear wearing heavy makeup that failed to cover bruises and black eyes. Kelly was devastated. "We should get out of here," she thought. "My mother and I love each other." One night, when Kelly was half asleep, she heard loud voices from the next room. "Why didn't you get rid of the kid before she was born?" "I tried to, Dan. It didn't work." Kelly felt as though she had been kicked in the gut. Her mother had never wanted her. No one wanted her. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Kelly found another escape from the unending dreariness of her life, the world of books. She became an insatiable reader and spent as much of her spare time as she could at the public library. At the end of the week, there was never any money left for Kelly, so she got a job as a babysitter, envying the happy families she would never have. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. At 17, Kelly was developing into the beauty her mother had once been. The boys at school began asking her for dates. She was repelled. She turned them all down. Saturdays, when there was no school and Kelly's chores were finished, she would hurry to the public library and spend the afternoon reading. Lisa Marie Houston, the librarian, was an intelligent, sympathetic woman with a quiet, friendly manner and whose clothes were as unpretentious as her personality. Seeing Kelly in the library so often, Mrs. Houston became curious. One day she said, "It's nice to see a young person enjoying reading so much. You spend a lot of time here." It was the opening gambit of a friendship. As the weeks went by, Kelly poured out her fears and hopes and dreams to the librarian. "What would you like to do with your life, Kelly?" "Be a teacher. I think you'd make a wonderful teacher. That's the most rewarding profession in the world." Kelly started to speak, then stopped. She was remembering a breakfast conversation with her mother and stepfather a week earlier. Kelly had said, "I need to go to college. I want to be a teacher." "A teacher?" Burke had laughed. "That's a dumbass idea. Teachers make zip. Do you hear me? Zip. You can make more sweeping floors. Anyway, your old lady and I don't have money to send you to college." "But I've been offered a scholarship and so what? You'll spend 4 years wasting your time. Forget it. With your looks, you could probably peddle your ass." Kelly had left the table. Now she said to Mrs. Houston, "There's a problem. They won't let me go to college." Her voice was choked. "I'll spend the rest of my life doing what I'm doing." "Of course you won't." Mrs. Houston's tone was firm. "How old are you?" "In 3 months I'll be 18. You'll soon be old enough to make your own decisions. You're a beautiful young woman, Kelly." "Do you know that?" "No. Not really. How can I tell her that I feel like a freak? I don't feel beautiful. I hate my life, Mrs. Houston. I don't want to be like, I want to get away from this town. I want something different, and I'll never have it." She was trying hard to control her emotions. I'll never have a chance to do something, to be somebody. Kelly, I never should have read all those books. Her voice was bitter. Why? Because they're filled with lies. All those beautiful people and glamorous places and magic? Kelly shook her head. There is no magic. Mrs. Houston studied her a moment. It was obvious that Kelly's sense of self-worth had been badly damaged. Kelly, there is magic, but you have to be the magician. You have to make the magic happen. Really? Kelly's tone was cynical. How do I do that? First, you have to know what your dreams are. Yours are to have an exciting life, filled with interesting people and glamorous places. The next time you come in here, I'll show you how to make your dreams come true. Liar. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The week after Kelly graduated, she returned to the library. Mrs. Houston said, Kelly, do you remember what I said about making your own magic? Kelly said skeptically, yes. Mrs. Houston reached behind her desk and pulled out a handful of magazines. Cosmo Girl, 17, Glamour, Mademoiselle, Essence, Allure, she handed them to Kelly. Kelly looked at them. What am I supposed to do with these? Have you ever thought of becoming a model? No. Look at these magazines. Then tell me if they give you any ideas that might bring magic into your life. She means well, Kelly thought, but she doesn't understand. Thank you, Mrs. Houston, I will. I'll start looking for a job next week. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Kelly took the magazines back to the boarding house and shoved them into a corner and forgot about them. She spent the evening doing her chores. As Kelly started to get into bed that night, exhausted, she remembered the magazines Mrs. Houston had given her. She picked up a few out of curiosity and started to skim through them. It was another world. The models were beautifully dressed, with handsome, elegant men at their sides, in London and Paris and exotic places all over the world. Kelly felt a sudden sense of yearning. She hastily put on a robe and walked down the hall to the bathroom. She studied herself in the mirror. She supposed that perhaps she was attractive. Everyone always told her she was. Even if it's true, I have no experience. She thought about her future life in Philadelphia and looked in the mirror again. Everyone has to start somewhere. You have to be the magician, make the magic happen.